Yeah, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. It's the Boxing Source checking in, and this is the July 31st, 2022 edition of the Boxing Source radio show, right? And we got a good number of things that we're going to be talking about in this particular podcast. We're pretty much trying to stream this thing live through YouTube, and this will be available on your favorite podcast apps. You know what I mean? Your your iTunes, your iHeartRadio, your Spotify, whatever it is, you're gonna be in there. Um, just getting back from being in the Brooklyn area. Of course, last night you had the fight card at the Barclays Center, and was a full fight card of sorts. So we're going to be talking about that fight card, of course, with the headline there in reference to one of those particular fights in that fight card, and we're going to go into that particular bout in some good detail, plus the main event and the co-feature bout, and also go into other news in the sport of boxing, which includes one of the big news tidbits that did come down yesterday, pretty much while that fight card in Barclays Center was happening. Um, it wasn't necessarily the news that people were looking for, so to speak, as far as like boxing fans. But as far as like events are concerned, within the summer, this one was really, really big blow to one of the events in the summer that was coming up. So we'll get into that. But with that being said, wanted to get things cracking as far as like the discussions going down. Like I said, I mean, I wanted to get into what happened in the opening bout for the Showtime Championship Boxing telecast, right? You had in the 140-pound division Gary Antuanne Russell versus Rances Barthelemy, with Gary Antuanne Russell coming in there with an undefeated record, right? Yeah, I mean, he was there, 15-0 coming into the bout with 15 of those wins by way of knockout or stoppage. Had his last particular bout against Victor Postal over in Las Vegas, where he kind of like was getting things, trying to get used to fighting guys with a lot more professional experience than he does there with Victor Postal. But near the end of that particular bout, he was able to get the win by stoppage. And then he goes into the bout at the Barclays Center against Rances Barthelemy. Barthelemy with one lone loss on his record up to that point, 29 wins. He had 29 wins in up to that point. So he was 29 wins, one loss, and one draw. So I mean that kind of like was like I said, it was another test there for Rances Barthelemy. Gary Russell there, Gary Antuanne Russell. Now, of course, it was notable because this was Antoine's first bout without the presence of his father there, Gary Russell Sr. He had, of course, been dealing with a lot of health complications over the past year and a half, 2 years up to his transition. And, so this was kind of like the first bout where it was fully, Gary Russell Jr. as his full-time trainer. In that bout, you had a lot of questions as far as like Gary Antuanne Russell is concerned, going up against someone the likes of, Rances Barthelemy there, who was, of course, a title fighter, had the longer reach. It was something to the point where, he had to, or Russell had to figure out how they would be able to get to Rances Barthelemy. But in the first round, you kind of like seen that he was coming up there, coming forward, throwing fast punches, catching Rances Barthelemy with some good power shots there a number of times that, had him pretty much get the early advantage in that particular bout, but going into, the next couple of rounds, you see Rances Barthelemy kind of be a little bit more patient, use his jab a little bit, but use the jab off of his back foot. So he was a little bit successful with the jab coming off of his back foot, but early on he really didn't have good success with some power shots or whatnot. But going into the latter part of the third and the fourth round, you kind of like seen him get that a little bit more. But you still had Gary Antuanne Russell still coming forward, still being a little bit, I wouldn't necessarily say patient, but trying to wait for the best time to attack Rances Barthelemy. You really didn't see him really try to probe in with the right jab and then come in with the left until I would say about the fourth, fifth round or so. But even with that, you kind of like seeing that he was still doing a little bit more there in that bout against Rances Barthelemy in comparison to the flip side with Barthelemy on Gary Antuanne Russell. Even though there were a couple of times when Rances Barthelemy did get in some good power shots on Gary Antuanne Russell, but nothing to kind of shift pretty much the fight in Rances Barthelemy's favor, right? So going into the the fifth round and such, you kind of seen it was still more of it almost seemed like a real feel 'em out type of fight. Rances Barthelemy was a little bit more active in this bout than in previous bouts that he's had. But it was still something to where he still was fighting off the back foot, throwing the left jab, trying to throw counters sometimes. But also on the flip side, you also had Gary Antuanne Russell throwing counters off of the jab that Rances Barthelemy was throwing. So it was like a real tactical battle, at least to me it was, for the majority of the bout for as long as it lasted, right? But then you had the thing there in the sixth round, pretty much still more of like a fill 'em out type of fight. You did see, for me, you did see the speed of Gary Antuanne Russell kind of bother Rances Barthelemy a little bit. But then he came in, Gary Antuanne Russell came in with the approach, stutter step, kind of fake with the left or something, and then came in with the right that caught Rances Barthelemy on the temple, knocked Rances Barthelemy down. The referee there, Shada Murdaugh, started to count. Rances Barthelemy was able to get up. He was staggering a little bit when he was on the canvas, but he was able to get up. When he got up, he walked to a neutral corner. The referee there, Shada Murdaugh, or as said after the fight, Antonio Tarver's cousin. I'm telling you, man, he looked like Antonio Tarver, man. I'm sorry, you did a little bit. Murdaugh kind of gave the count. Then he looked at Rances Barthelemy. He gave some instruction to Rances Barthelemy. To me, live, it didn't really look clear. You know how referees do sometimes when after they do an 8 count, pretty much an 8 count, if the fighter gets up before 8, that they'll say go to the right or go to the left or come to me or something like that. I don't think that you really saw that coming from the referee Murdaugh there when it came to Rances Barthelemy, and he immediately waved the bout, which had a lot of the crowd upset. of course, had the corner of Rances Barthelemy upset, but it does register as another stoppage victory for Gary Antuanne Russell, who is now 16-0 there in the super lightweight division, 140 pounds. After the bout, like I said, you really had a good number of the crowd, really upset. I was over in press row. There was one columnist there that was very upset about the stoppage and felt like Rances Barthelemy was winning the fight, which I didn't really see that at all. He said that Gary Antuanne Russell won one of those 5 rounds up to the point of the 6th, which I definitely didn't see. But the thing was, it was pretty much a consensus that the referee should have gave Rances Barthelemy a better chance to try to get into or back into the fight, or see if he could get through the round, or if Gary Antuanne Russell would have been able to have a clear, definitive finish or clear, definitive KO or TKO victory over Rances Barthelemy. After the fight, of course, they talked with Rances Barthelemy, who felt like, of course, definitely they shouldn't have stopped it. He said that he felt good, that he was caught with a good shot. And he said he told the referee that he said that he's fine and he's good to go. And he said, yeah, of course he wants a rematch, but with a different referee. On the flip side, you had Gary Antuanne Russell, who was, talking there with Jim Gray and whatnot. He said that, that this particular bout is pretty much like the first of many without, his father, Gary Sr. in his corner. So, that you had to have, tunnel vision when it comes to preparing for and being into the fight. And, it kind of did discuss that to a certain extent when, we talked with Gary Antuanne Russell a couple of weeks ago, so we kind of said that. But when it came to, setting up that particular shot, he said he had Rances backing up, and that, he was, trying to look for the right cross, but, he just shot in. Antoine shot in that right hook, that he really didn't see that. So it was almost, like I said, pretty much like live. It seemed like he did a feint with his left and then just came up with a right hook, so he caught Rances Barthelemy with a good shot. So I feel like that was a good, very good punch there, by Gary Antuanne Russell, And so, like I said, I feel like he's going to, move forward there in the super lightweight division, 140 pounds. There's a number of fights that could be out there for Gary Antuanne Russell. A number of people may see if he would be ready for a world title shot. But of course, you still have the things going down when it comes to the titles there at super lightweight. It doesn't necessarily seem like Josh Taylor, who was the standing undisputed champion there at 140 pounds, is giving up all of his belts. Looks like he will, potentially have the rematch against Jack Catterall. But when it comes to the WBA, I think it's the WBA title has been, officially vacated or whatnot. What else is out there? I think it was soon it would be the IBF title. At least that's to be. I feel like the IBF title is going to be vacated, and the WBC title, I feel like, is going to be officially vacated there in the super lightweight division, so that you'll have the vacant WBC title put up for grabs there with Jose Zepeda and Jose Carlos Ramirez. But going back to this thing here with Gary Antuanne Russell, Looking at rankings that are out there in the WBA, he's ranked number 11, and I think he is number 7 in the WBC rankings. But we'll see if he is going to be entered into the WBO or the IBF rankings later on down the line. I kind of like talked about this in a conversation on Twitter earlier today that maybe he could potentially fight someone like a Cletus Saldin, or maybe we'll see what happens in August as you have there with Demetrius Salita and Salita Promotions. He has a card that features a 140-pound guy that's undefeated, Shojahan Ergashev. So Ergashev gets through that particular fight. Maybe, we could talk about having Ergashev in there with Gary Antuanne Russell. But we got to see how that 140-pound division shapes up here in the next couple of months or so when it comes to world titles with Josh Taylor. But for me, Gary Antuanne Russell, they're saying at 140 pounds. There is also something that is on the Boxing Source YouTube channel where I had a conversation with Mr. Gary Russell Jr. And in that particular conversation, he did say that, yeah, I know that Gary Antuanne Russell weighed in at 137 pounds for this particular bout against Rances Barthelemy, in that, Antoine did say that he says that he could comfortably make 135 pounds. But he feels like it's better for Gary Antuanne Russell to continue to campaign at super lightweight, because sooner or later, those fighters at 135 pounds are going to eventually move up to 140, with the exception of maybe Gervonta Tank Davis, unless it's a fight that is of the magnitude of having Tank Davis versus Gary Antuanne Russell there at 140 pounds, which has been brought up a couple of times, not just on this channel, but on another channel through YouTube. Shout out to the Rise podcast, Coach Tyrone, Coach Squeeze, there's Senior Cubs. Of course, you have Coach Calvin Ford and Coach Kenny on there as well. So shout out to them real quick. But their 140-pound division, of course, has been very active over the past year and a half, 2 years, when it comes to, the title situation and all those contenders that are there at 140 pounds. And Gary Antuanne Russell is soon to try to get back into that or get into the mix there at 140 pounds. But, like I said, I mean, we got that TKO victory with, like I said, Antonio Tarver's cousin stopping the fight. I guess a lot of people felt like, it was a premature stoppage, especially, Barthelemy head trainer there, Orlando Cuellar, felt like that, it was a very good fight between the two fighters, and that, the fans paid good money to see that particular bout, which opened the Showtime boxing telecast, and that, they wanted to see a definitive ending there. Of course, with some that were attending there at the Barclays Center for those fights beforehand, there were a couple of fights that kind of got stopped, kind of prematurely or in a weird situation. So with this one, with a lot of eyes there in the Barclays Center, and also opening the telecast on Showtime, you probably would have thought like, maybe it could have had a more definitive ending. And, checking, like I said, the crowd and, social media pretty much immediately after the fight, you really had something where I guess a number of fans were not happy at all in reference to that particular finish. And in some cases, they really kind of like viewed Gary Antuanne Russell negatively, which I kind of felt like was very weird, especially when you kind of like seeing like he's trying to build his way up, there in the super lightweight division. You know what I mean? And thing about it is like, hey, you want to have it to the point where, you want to see him as one of those guys that is, um, up and coming at 140 pounds. Of course, within the sport of boxing, people like to talk about, Gary Antuanne Russell is a guy in the amateurs that had like a winning record over Jerome Boots Ennis and whatnot. But we got to see what he does here as a pro at 140 pounds. And we got to see what else is out there for Gary Antuanne Russell later on down the line. Hopefully, within the next couple of weeks or so, we might have another conversation with Gary Antuanne Russell, after his win here against Rances Barthelemy, and see what he thinks about that. And also, how the crowd kind of like thought about the reaction to the stoppage by, like I said, Antonio. Oh, from this point forward, if I see him on the camera or something like that, man, I'm gonna call him Antonio Tom's cousin. Sorry, Antonio Tom, man, that's the magic man. But they gotta look a little bit favorable, man. But we gotta see like how Gary Antuanne reacts to that and see what's next out there for him at 140 pounds. So, just wanted to, drop that down on there for the people. Wanted to see, what y'all would have thought about that particular bout and that particular finish. We'll see how, things kind of like shape up at 140 pounds, because there's still a lot that needs to be sorted out at 140 pounds, especially after, like I said, Josh Taylor giving up belt at the belt at the belt. But it looks like he's keeping one belt. So we're going to see how that pretty much goes there, right? Wanted to jump ahead to the main event that was on Showtime, as former two-division champion Danny Garcia got back in the ring to face Jose Benavidez Jr. You had Jose Benavidez Jr. with the lone loss to the WBO welterweight champion Terence Crawford. Had 27 wins and one draw. 18 of those wins came by way of knockout or stoppage. Of course, Danny Garcia, like I said, most high division champion, had the record of 36 wins and 3 losses. Of course, 21 of those wins by way of knockout. All 3 wins, or 3 losses, came to Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, and Errol Spence. All of those guys, were former or were world champions at the time there at that particular point when Danny Garcia fought him. Of course, he had that run at 140 pounds, going up to 147. Won the WBC belt at 147 there before, having his first loss to Keith Thurman, which was like a split decision there, and then after that, had one win before he fought Sean Porter, which was another close fight that he ended up losing. And then you had the thing there with Errol Spence, where Errol Spence pretty much like had a clear decision win there. So that's what we had there up to this particular bout. But I wanted to see if I could get in a guest here to jump on to this particular podcast, checking in, from Atlanta. That's right, one of the great contributors to the Boxing Source here. That is the Boxing Academic. What's going on?
Not much. How you doing, sir?
Oh man, just doing well. Almost, like I said, I got back from the event there at the Barclays Center. Of course, before that, had a long vacation, so it's been a very busy past few weeks or so for me. But just nice. Back here talking boxing. Opened the podcast with talking about the thing there with Gary Antuanne Russell and Rances Barthelemy. So of course, Gary Antuanne got the TKO stoppage win by, like I said, Antonio Tom's cousin stopping him. What did you think about the fight and the stoppage by the referee?
I thought it was a good level of fight for Gary Antuanne Russell. I like that Gary Antuanne couldn't just bulldoze through, and he had to be more calculated. That's take that term with a grain of salt, because he was getting clipped at times, but he had to at least not only rely on his brute force, and had to evoke different things in order to be successful. And so he reminds me so much of young Sean Porter, where he used to just headbutt and bulldoze and be off balance and wild. And as you can see with Sean Porter, 90% of the fighters that work very well with. But then you got them elite fighters that it works with them, right? But it takes a bit more than just the bulldozing. It takes the nuance. It takes the jab. It takes all of the other stuff. Yeah. He looked good in the fight. I think that the resistance that he got from Bartholomew, obviously he was going to win the fight. If the fight went any further, he would have won the fight. He was up on all the cards. That's even without counting the knockdown, I think, in that round. So he probably could have got clipped again, maybe, because he was getting touched with, like, I forgot which hand it was, but there was a possibility for him to get clipped again. But he responded to it well. He bounced back well. Obviously, the man got great endurance, because that was one of the things that helped him sort of bounce back from it. And just him being able to work on his entry. I think that, I don't know what round it was, but he made an adjustment where he saw that Bartholomew was using his range and like catching him at the end of those punches and catching him coming in, sort of. So he closed the distance and started like fighting on Bartholomew's shoulder. Mm-hmm. And so while Bartholomew was doing well with his like little lazy punches and just sort of like throwing them little bolo punches and stuff, I think that Gary Antuanne, changed the sort of course of the fight, and that's what sort of allowed him to do the rest of it, to where he sort of did a change up and then did the lead right hook or whatever, because Bartholomew was probably looking for him to do the incoming thing, and then I think he tried to throw some, or he backed up, or he was trying to evade what he thought was just him trying to get in and just evade his space, and then he like changed it up through that lead hook, boom, caught him, and the same outcome would have very likely happened, and or he would have had a wide decision. He would have won all cards, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I mean, I must tell the truth in this. It was a win for the Black American guys. It was hey, the ref said he ain't taking no chances. You know what I'm saying? It's a win for the Black American guys, and it ain't right, but Yeah. Hey, Canelo get it. Why can't Gary Antuanne get it? It ain't right, but he was winning the fight.
Yeah, I mean, through the judges' scorecards, through 5 rounds, 2 of the judges had Gary Antuanne Russell up 4 rounds to 1, and the other judge had him up 3 rounds to 2. So I mean, I feel like it was something where the activity of Barthelemy probably wasn't enough to give at least the 2 judges most of the rounds to Barthelemy, and it got to Gary Antuanne Russell instead. But you kind of like nailed it with Gary Antuanne Russell when you see him having a style pretty much similar to Sean Porter. I heard that earlier today, that he kind of like has that style where he just gets low, gets down, and tries to get into the approach, throws a couple punches in, but by the time he gets in there, he'll try to get in with more punches, but it kind of like looks a little bit sharper, faster there, because the main criticism of Porter was that he smothered a lot of his work. He kind of like got to the inside, and he smothered a lot of his work. So while he was effective as far as like trying to wear down his opponent's roughhousing and things like that, that he really didn't kind of like land some significant shots along the way for a lot of the significant fights that he had. But later on in his career, he kind of like tried to, I would say, clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, he
And be
definitely
more
refined
of
it.
a boxer,
So I'm gonna ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary Antuanne has been knocking enough people out. I don't know what his record is, but the last few fights I saw him, he knocked people out. Sean Porter was knocking people out early as well too. Do you think when he steps up in greater competition than this guy, will that style and will his power? I think he has power. Based
Mm-hmm.
upon what I see from him, I think he got power. Will that translate, and will he be the Terence Crawford or the Errol Spence? Because they knock out good guys. Will he be them of higher competition?
Well, yeah, you brought up Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, guys that have knocked out or stopped guys in a high level, especially with the recent fights. Crawford against Sean Porter and Errol Spence against Yordenis Ugas. It remains to be seen here with Gary Antuanne Russell. He's had two of his recent fights against guys that have been former champions or former world champions in Rances, Barthelemy, and Victor Postal. They have like other contenders there at the 140-pound division that are out there. There's like a Brandon Lee, that's out there. There's like I said earlier, Joe Jahan Ergashev is also someone who is unbeaten there. That's at 140 pounds. You have a contender there in Subriel Matias that is pretty much one of the top contenders there for the IBF title. That could be a potential opponent there for Gary Antuanne Russell. But we'll see what happens there with him. Maybe they could have some other fighters there at 140 pounds that could be available there for Gary Antuanne Russell. But we got to see like what happens later on down the line there to see who he'll be matched up with. We're currently, live, like I said, on YouTube, but also we got it through Twitter Spaces. So, thanks for those checking in on Twitter Spaces. But, we're also here live on YouTube. If you wanted to chime in a little bit, you could go on YouTube and then, request, for the link to kind of like jump in and pitch in there. Wanted to get back into the thing here for the main event, Danny Garcia versus Jose Benavidez Jr. That was at 154 pounds. Of course, these guys are like, getting in there at 154. It was like the debut there for Danny Garcia, 154 to a certain extent. Jose Benavidez kind of like said it was a debut of sorts for him at 154, but his last bout that he had that was over at the Footprint Center in Phoenix was north of 154 pounds. So technically, yeah, he said that, it was his first fight at 154 as well. But he's there. He was like, the taller guy. He was a bigger guy in this bout against Danny Garcia. And, people just wanted to see what Danny Garcia could do there at 154 pounds. And, went through the full 12 rounds. I'm not sure why it went through 12 rounds to me. Usually for me, if it goes through, 12 rounds, that's usually for like a world title bout, but, that's the thing about it. But, this thing was scheduled for 12 rounds. And, it was more of like, to see what Danny Garcia could do. And for me, to be quite honest, it almost looked like, and I know that, I was there, for the fight, I was there, post-fight pressure and things like that. And that, Jose Benavidez said that he took every one of Danny Garcia's shots and wasn't really effective or affected by those punches or whatever. But I really didn't see that much aggression coming out of Jose Benavidez Jr. in this bout. I felt like it was a little bit disappointing of sorts for Jose Benavidez, because there could have been times when Benavidez could have really got to Danny Garcia and didn't really press on the action for it. It's not like, we know Danny Garcia to be someone of a guy that has a very good defensive prowess. So, and he's flat-footed, just like, Jose Benavidez is flat-footed, so in a sense. So he's right there to be hit. He's not going to, sidestep you or anything like that. He'll probably block punches or try to see if he can move his head. But outside of that, he's not gonna, really do some movements that'll really wow you or anything like that. But he has, as people say, one of the best shins in the game. So a number of the punches that Jose Benavidez did land on him, particularly in the second half of the fight, Danny Garcia was able to take. But even with that, you kind of like seeing Danny Garcia do a couple things here and there, land some significant shots, land a left hook, kind of like pretty much stop the momentum of Jose Benavidez Jr. a couple of times. But for me, for Jose Benavidez Jr., a lot of the times when he got hit by a big punch, he would just like shrug his shoulders or tap his gloves together or something like that. And I'm like, don't do that. Just go ahead and just turn around and go right back at him. You know what I mean? So I just felt like, over the course of that bout, watching that bout, it was more of like Danny Garcia just going through the motions, getting the win, and Jose Benavidez Jr. just getting through the fight, And I know that, he says that there's more to see from Jose Benavidez Jr., but I needed to see more out of Jose Benavidez Jr. than what I saw in this particular bout. It did go through 12 rounds. It ended up being a majority decision win for Danny Garcia, as Waleska Roldan scored that bout 114, which I have no idea where that came from. Real quick, wanted to get some comments there from the Boxing Academic, and then we're going to have two more guests coming in here in a few more moments to kind of like talk about this main event. So, Boxing Academic, share your thoughts on this, and then we're going to add a couple more people on.
If it's Matt, tell him don't come in here trying to act spicy on the dang thing, because we friends off of any other, public platform. Matt be being my friend, and then he come on here. He always got his one-liners and stuff, and I put up with it because he told me off like saying like, "Hey man, I'm trying to sell tickets." He just Matt like a performer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, Matt, whatever, man. But I'm outing his ass to everybody.
I got something about Matt too in reference to this particular event, because he disappointed me, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. But this fight with Jose Benavidez was, and I mean this respectfully when I say this, was just as unimportant as Terence Crawford's fight with Jose Benavidez was. And in my mind, the original word I was using was unimpressive, but that didn't capture what I actually meant to say, because it wasn't unimportant and unimpressive on Terence Crawford and or Danny Garcia's side. It was unimportant on Jose Benavidez's side. He got the lineage. Obviously, he was supposed to be sort of a prodigy or whatever. He got the lineage in terms of his brother being very well, which means that, okay, you're going to get opportunities. But he's a skillful punching bag. I mean, and again, I mean that respectfully. Like, he, in every fight, big fight I seen him in, which is just Terence Crawford and this, he did the things, like he'll do a few skillful things, because you can tell that they had some good training, him and his brother, and him training his brother led his brother to be as good as he is, which means that he had to have some skill. to help get his brother to the level that he at. No different from the Russells and stuff like that. Like Gary Russell being successful went into Gary Antuanne being successful and all the other Russells being successful. You can't get away from that. But the dude is a punching bag sort of, and all the posturing of when he get hit and stuff, it's just a part of it. It's like, you got to posture and do all of this, and that's all one can really do, because he can't increase the volume, because then he'll get tired. He has to, go at a certain pace. But you mentioned that Danny Garcia only, he's limited in terms of like his defense. Danny was doing some like spin outs. He was like pivoting off his feet to get out of harm's way. Now, what I will say, Jose Benavidez didn't have much of a threat because he was more flat-footed than Danny, but Danny was doing some pivots to get out of trouble, which was a different thing. Danny was throwing more body shots. Danny actually threw more punches than I actually remember him throwing in other fights. I don't remember Danny throwing that many like leading shots. Danny more of a like let you lead, but Danny had a conscious plan in his mind that this guy ain't finna, be on par with me with the number of shots he throwing, which means that he'll stick in competitive rounds. I didn't stay to see the scores read because I didn't think that there would be a tie scorecard. Honestly, in some rounds, I kind of dozed off. I mean, I didn't doze off, but I kind of was like uninterested. But yeah, I mean, good job to Danny. It's unimportant. I mean that as respectfully as I can.
Or unimportant or insignificant.
Insignificant. It was insignificant. Yeah. This didn't tell me. The only thing. The truest person. I'm glad I'm gonna say this was from Detroit. What's my boy from Detroit? Real funny. Tony Harrison said it's 247 pounders coming up trying to play in my division. That's the truth. It's 247 pounders coming up trying to play in Tony Harrison division. I like Tony Harrison. I want to see Tony Harrison fight Danny Garcia because I want to see what happened. I want to see what happened because all those good and decent 154 pounders. Now it's time to see these boys who grown up in weight to see how the difference in what we saw between Danny and Benevides. Danny is an elite athlete, a lower tier elite athlete, right? Because for him to do what he did at 135, 130, whatever division it was that he was like wrecking shop at, and for him to like knock out people and just have that touch and stuff, Danny is a quality fighter. But when you put him up against like A level fighters, he get real regular. But yeah, it was just different a skill. I'm gonna let somebody else talk.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the thing there for a little bit in reference to Danny Garcia and his 140-pound run and 147, also his amateur run, and also the thing with Tony Harrison. But I want to add in, of course, our guy checking in from Tampa, the chef, the promotions king, the security guard specialist, Brother Terrell in the building. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Jeff? What's up, Jay? Big up. First of all, big up Bahamas. I see the shirt.
Yeah.
What's up, Mike? What's going on with you, man? You good?
Not much. How you doing?
Hanging in there, man. Been under the weather. I'm actually dealing with a lot of medical stuff lately, but I'm hanging in there.
Hey, stay up for me, Terrell.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. But yeah, Mike, I'm glad you spoke first. I get your point when you say it was unimportant for Benavidez, someone that's been out of the ring for 3 years, and even then when we last saw him, it was just a limited performance in that regard. And that's pretty much what we saw last night, right? I mean, because the thing about it, for Benavidez, he was a live dog in the sense that he was in there to fight. He was never hurt. He's never out of wind, never tired, stuff like that. But for the most, all he did, like you say, he's a glorified punching bag last night. He just pretty much plodded around the ring. He threw punches at some certain points, but was there a strategy to win? I didn't see one. And even when they cut away to his younger brother, David Benavidez, in fight interview, he said he's in there to win. He's in there to come back and show what he's got. He pretty much showed us nothing. I didn't see anything. like I said, for the most, all he did, he threw certain punches, but for the most, and it was a shame and not that the larger man wins all the time, but he never did impose his size on Danny Garcia. Never did. Not at any point. He was right there, and so many times he's right there, but he just didn't let his hands go. And he didn't cut off the ring. He put him on the ropes. I mean, Danny was on the ropes a few times, but he did not take advantage of that. He just simply was standing there, just going back and forth, stuff like that, not letting his hands go. But even that with Danny Garcia coming in at 152, that was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought that he would at least come in at the weight class limit, but we all know that Danny is not a big. He's not going to be a big super welterweight as we see last night. So, but the thing about it, what did impress me, he did retain his boxing skills, and he does have enough power to keep Benevides honest, at least, right? Because if that was the case, it probably could have changed things like that. But there's times where Danny just gave good exchanges, good power shots, things like that. Just to let Benevides know, hey, I'm here. Don't walk up on me. Don't pull up on me. Don't pull up
on me.
So it was very interesting to see Garcia back in the ring. Even the post-fight interviews where he just kind of let out a range of emotions, letting us know what he's been dealing with, depression, things like that. And it's kind of funny. Over the last couple of years, I watch his social media, I watch his Instagram. It's like, does this dude not want to fight no more or what? He's just busy doing.
Yeah.
I get family. I get there's nothing wrong with doing family stuff and things like that. But when you look at like this IG and stuff like that, all you see is just family stuff and just concentrating on selling merchandise.
Yeah.
And there's pretty much no real mentions of fighting and stuff like that. So I'm glad to see him back in the ring. We have another player at 154. But even with that said, with him being a smaller guy at 154, there's only so many fights that he can take, right? And with that said, we all know in boxing, with the right matchmaking, you can carve out a career at a different weight class.
Yeah, most definitely.
Tony Harrison would be a perfect fight. With that said, because Tony Harrison, he's a good boxer, but he's taken a couple of bad losses here lately, things like that.
He ain't ready for Charlo. Who else he gonna fight?
I don't think.
No.
I'm gonna see how I can structure this because I wanted to talk about that in reference to Danny Garcia and potential opponents there at 154 pounds. Boxing Academic did mention there that Tony Harrison pretty much described that fight as 247 pounders coming up to his division, and that he was really interested in fighting the winner of this particular bout. The bout goes through. Danny Garcia wins. Jim Gray is up there talking with Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia talks about him, dealing with depression or, kind of like doing things in order to cope with depression until, he said that, hey, I just got to get myself back in the ring. But then they talk about, what would be next for Danny Garcia. And he named 3 guys. He named Keith Thurman in a rematch. He named Erislandy Lara, and he said that would be at 155 pounds. I think he said something about Errol Spence again, but one name that wasn't mentioned was Tony Harrison. He mentioned Charlo. He mentioned Charlo, but he had mentioned Tony Harrison, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, Tony Harrison's there in attendance. He would be willing to, go ahead and step up and face you. There at 154 pounds. But so why not Tony Harrison? And I think it kind of goes into what you're saying, Terrell, in that, you could be matched up fairly well in the division that you move up to if they have opponents that could be set up for you. Now, I know that after the fight, Danny repeated what he was saying in reference to those potential opponents. But when I was talking with Angel Garcia, his father and trainer, he's like, "Hey man, he can fight anybody, bro. You could ask the matchmakers at Golden Boy. You could ask Eric Gomez. You could ask all those guys at Golden Boy. Like Danny Garcia put his name in the hat for anybody. But now, at this particular point of his career, where he's kind of had his fights, he's built his reputation, he's built his resume, he's made his money. Now, here at this particular point of his, professional career, what is he aiming to do next? He's there. I know it's been, he's 34 years old. He's been in the professional game since 2007. He's had an amateur career, of course. Had a couple notable fights and wins in amateur ranks, and then here in the professional ranks. So the question is, what direction is Danny Garcia going to go at 154? Yes, there can be fights that can be made at 154 where it could seem like, from a matchup standpoint, he could have a little bit of an advantage, or see if he could win. But for me, someone like a Tony Harrison that moves around the ring very well, that can jab very well, control the pace of a fight very well, I don't think that's a particular bout that Danny Garcia should try to go for. Keith Thurman in a rematch? Maybe, especially above 147. If they could get the money for it, hey, why not? But there's a number of fights at 154 that I feel like Danny Garcia shouldn't really try to go into there. Terrell, you were going to say something on that?
Yeah, who did Tony Harrison last fought and lose to?
Because his last loss.
I remember it's a very disappointing loss.
No, he had something where I think he had a win, but some people, either it was like a split decision win, or it was something where it was a draw. I think it was against
his last fight. He beat the dude. His last fight. He beat him pretty easily. Whoever the last fight was.
His last fight against, I think it was Sergio Garcia. He clearly won that fight. But the one before that, I think it was against Cornflake, or it was against Brian Perella. That was a draw. And that fight was after his KO loss to Mel Charlo in the rematch. So then after that, he had the split draw against Brian Perella. And then after that, Sergio Garcia, who, had a very close bout with the guy that's supposedly a buzzsaw, Sebastian Fundora. It wasn't a unanimous decision win, but a lot of people felt like Sergio Garcia pretty much got Fundora in that fight. But then against Tony Harrison, it was just a whole different fight. And that, Tony Harrison almost pitched a shutout in that particular bout, So that was the thing here with Harrison in his recent bout. That was in April of this year.
Didn't Perella fight somebody where he did well as well, other than Tony Harrison?
I thought it was nah. Mm-mm.
So Tony Harrison was his best performance thus far.
Much like his best performance, yeah. Yep.
I mean, you make a good point about Tony Harrison. That's a bad size is bad for Danny Garcia. The movement, the dexterity, the size with the movement and dexterity, that's just a bad matchup. I didn't think about it. I just thought about how exciting it would be to see the fight. But yeah, that's a bad matchup for Danny.
Danny Garcia listed at 5'8" with a 68.5-inch reach, potentially going up against Tony Harrison, who is 6'1" with a 76.5-inch reach.
Oh yeah, that's even. Yeah. That's.
I still think it's a possible matchup within the next year.
But
think about it. You guys have to give Danny Garcia a chance to grow within the weight division. You know that. Yeah. So his first fight at 154 came in 152, things like that. He's going to continue to train. I'm sure he's working with a dietitian, things like that, to put on some additional weight. So let's give him a chance to grow into this new division first, and see what can happen.
Yeah, Angel Garcia said, "Man, look, man, I got him. This time, he could come in there. He don't really have to focus on, losing weight or cutting weight. So we had 2 fights. He had a fight and losing weight, and then he would have the actual fighter training, to prepare for his fight. Now he don't have to worry about weight. But, Danny Garcia currently is ranked number 5 in the WBC rankings at 154 pounds.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead real quick before I have a potential matchup for him.
Oh, nice. So how tall is Jamal Charlo then if Tony Harrison is 6'1"?
Jamal should be around that same height. I think it's like 6 feet or something like that.
So all the top guys at this division ain't a realistic.
I mean, Mel Charlo.
All these guys ain't a realistic matchup for Danny Garcia then. All the top guys ain't realistic. Fundora ain't realistic.
Oh yeah, Fundora no.
Like
Fundora no.
I get what you're saying. He gonna have a targeted approach in this division.
So when the thing with Terrell talking about matchups where he could potentially be matched up well, right? You had like a couple of opponents out there, that he could face at 154 pounds. You could have like maybe a Jason Rosario. You know what I mean? I don't know if Eric Salubin maybe. I gotta see like who is it?
What about J-Rock?
J-Rock was actually, I thought J-Rock was gonna be on this particular card, but he ended up getting taken off of the card that was last night. So I don't know what's going on with him.
Wouldn't Lubin be just
is another potential guy that could be an opponent for Danny Garcia. But I have one opponent that's out there that could be a very interesting matchup for Danny Garcia, and he's a former world champion. And he could have been the undisputed super welterweight champion, and that's Brian Carlos Castaño. That could be a very interesting matchup for Danny Garcia. And I feel like that could be a good one for him.
For him to shine, sort of.
I think
for him to shine. I mean, you would go up against a former world champion. It could be a fight that you could potentially win. But the thing with Castaño is a very crafty fighter. He's a very crafty fighter, fairly efficient in his punches. It's just that, when he went up against Mel Charlo, especially in the rematch, Mel Charlo was at his absolute best in that rematch to me.
And he's shorter too, right? Castaño's a little shorter too, right?
Castaño is a little bit on the shorter side. He's there around the same height. Around the same height, a little bit shorter than Danny Garcia.
Well, you're right. That's probably the best matchup for him.
Yeah.
I mean, Castaño can hit, but I think Danny could. Like I forget about Castaño's feet. Was he more stationary or like what was how is
he came forward. Remember, like particularly in that first fight against Mel Charlo, he came forward a lot. Charlo was trying to deal with things, being on the ropes, having his guard up, and trying to fight off of his back foot. It was just in the second half of that particular fight when Charlo was on his front foot, coming forward and being more aggressive. Then Castaño pretty much had like some issues there. And I think that was like implemented in the rematch where you've seen Charlo be more confident and kind of like staying stationary and not really backing up that much.
So even in the second fight, now you're reminding me, Castaño still was like almost step for step, step for step, but enough close.
Like blow for blow, you know what I mean? Especially
like
the first few rounds.
He was able to keep the range and stay on him and move and be fluid enough to like stay on him and sort of almost land punches. But Charlo keep the high guard, bend down with the waist. You know what I'm saying? He doing things that he should do. So when I think about it,
I mean, it would be a good fight. But I mean, the only thing I would question for Garcia, can he keep up with Castaño's punch output level, things like that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And can he maintain it throughout a 12 round fight? Because like I said, Castaño in both fights with Charlo was there toe for toe with him until he got knocked out in the second fight, things like that. But I mean, for our Castaño Garcia fight, we already know in that fight, Garcia's going to fight off the back foot. He's going to be fighting defensively, things like that. And he's going to definitely be a counter puncher in that regard to see if he can catch Casano with something like his great left hook, things like that. So, I mean, it would be a good fight. Like I said, just for me, I would just be concerned with Danny Garcia. Can he keep that pace up throughout that fight? Because Casano is a bit of a high output guy in that regard.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny threw more punches than I recall him throwing. Like his output in this fight. Now he ain't had nobody that was like throwing back and hitting him now, but you know, at least him throwing more shots was encouraging to me because that was a part of his defense. His offense was a part of his defense to keep what's his name, as you said, Terrell, honest.
Yeah. And you got to remember, for Garcia coming up to 154. He got to show not only had to win this fight that was in front of him, he got to show the division, hey, I'm just going to come in here and throw like 20, 30 punches per round. I got to show you guys something that I'm here to stay. I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with somewhat within the division. So yeah, he definitely has to throw more punches in order to show people what he has.
Yeah. And, my thing is, when you're moving up against or moving up to a higher division, when you're going up against guys that have been used to the division, a lot of the fighters there at 154 pounds have been there for a very, very long time. So they're used to getting down to whatever they were getting down to. And this is what I was, talking about with Angel Garcia is that, many of these guys that are at 154, they're coming down from 180, 185 pounds or whatever it is, and then getting down to 154 to make weight or, to make weight for their bout. And then they rehydrate to 170, 175 or something like that, So it's like, are you going to be able to, deal with something like that where they rehydrate to like something that'll be bigger than what Danny Garcia is once he rehydrates? So, that's one thing that, I would pay attention to when it comes to Danny Garcia facing these other opponents here at the 154-pound division. Anything else here there for Danny Garcia before I go into the co-feature about a little bit and then the next topic with Mr. Jake Paul?
Well, I would say you mentioned the other black guy, Lubin. I don't know if that would be a good matchup for Danny Garcia either. Because ain't Lubin taller as well? And he throws punches.
Lubin's taller. He does throw a number of punches.
He's not on Tony Harrison level, yes.
Yeah,
but
he's not on Tony Harrison's level.
So you saying he has enough deficiencies to where it would make sense for Danny Garcia?
Yeah, especially now, given man, he just got punished against Sebastian Fundora, man. That was just, he was able to score a knockdown against, Fundora, but like Fundora said after that bout, it was like he knew that he was, hurt or kind of stunned a little bit. So before, Lubin could get a little bit more in, he just went ahead, backed up, and then took a knee, to collect himself. And then after that, he just went back to work and just ended up, like I said, punishing Erickson Lubin. But, Lubin, had built up, his record after that, loss to Mel Charlo in 2017. And he had, pretty good wins against Ishe Smith, Terrell Garcia, and Jason Rosario. But, now after, that bout against Fundora, which was that was one of the more anticipated fights for me, was that one, because I knew it was going to be a very good action fight, and it lived up to that expectation for sure. So maybe Erickson Lubin, I'm not, I don't know. It just depends on the status of Lubin. Maybe I should see if I could find out where Lubin is over in the O, because I'll be visiting the O later this week.
What's the O?
Orlando.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, outside of that, there's, like I said, there's multiple guys there, the 154-pound division that Danny Garcia could face. So we'll have to see, how that particularly turns out. Shout out to those that are, listening live through the Twitter Spaces. We're having this live conversation through YouTube. If you wanted to chime in, you could either, send a request there through the Twitter Spaces, or go on the YouTube channel and then see if we could send you the link so that you could be able to jump in on this conversation. Wanted to get on real quick on the co-feature bout that featured the babyface assassin Adam Kownacki going up against Ali Demirezen. Kownacki, trying to get back in the thick of things in the heavyweight division, had those 2 stoppage losses to Robert Helenius. One in the Barclays Center, and then once again in the T-Mobile Arena last year. Ali Demirezen, has had a string of wins. His last one was against Gerald Washington. Both of these guys did stop Gerald Washington at different points of their careers. For me, going into this bout, I really wanted to see what the state of mind of Adam Kownacki was going into this particular bout against someone like Ali Demirezen, who is he's an Olympian from Turkey. There, was a very tough, sturdy guy going into the bout, and I wanted to see how Adam Kownacki approached this bout, because usually Kownacki is someone who throws punches and bunches and things like that, but as we saw in his bouts against Robert Helenius, he was prone to get hit. And with him being prone to get hit, he was getting hit by big shots by Robert Helenius. And then in the second bout, man, that was just an absolute whitewashing there by Robert Helenius. So here against Ali Demirezen, there was a number of anticipated fans there, of course, him being based in Brooklyn, a lot of, people from Poland there in the Brooklyn area went in there to attend this particular bout. It wasn't as much as I thought it would have been. Usually sometimes when he has those fights at the Barclays Center, there's a whole bunch of fans there for Adam Kownacki, whether it's a main event, a co-feature bout, or it could be like the third bout in the 9-bout card. There would be a lot of his fans out there. But this time around, it didn't really seem like as much to me. But I wanted to see like how he would make the adjustments. I think he had like a new trainer and things like that. In those first couple of rounds, he looked like he was a very efficient fighter. To me, he had a mix of the activity, but he was also being precise, looking at seeing what was open, kind of worked the body a lot in those first few rounds. I thought he was pretty good when it came to, gauging the distance between him and Demirezen. That Demirezen a number of times was throwing his jab or throwing some power shots, and he was out of range. And then there was a couple of times when you kind of saw Adam Kownacki moving his head. So in those first few rounds, I pretty much felt like Kownacki had the advantage. But then for some reason, he kind of got lazy on the defensive side. And he, when he was walking up to Demirezen, he would be in range, but he wouldn't have both of his hands up, right? He would have his left hand down, leaving his whole side open for the right hand for Demirezen. And Demirezen was able to land, a couple lead right hands, or, if he didn't like do a lead right hand, he could be out of range with his left jab. But when he come forward, he would come forward with the left jab, be out of range, but still have the momentum to come forward over with his right and still land with the right. And so I felt like those power shots from Demirezen contributed to the momentum that he was having, particularly in the second half of the fight. The activity from Kownacki was down a little bit in the second half of the fight, up until like the 10th round or whatever it is, where it was like a little bit back and forth there. But you kind of like seen that Demirezen was able to take a lot of those shots there from Adam Kownacki, particularly the body shots, because I thought the body shots from Kownacki would have contributed to a lot more later on down the line in the fight. But like I said, with those lapses in defense from Adam Kaunaki, that opened it up for Demirison to, get back in the fight midway through. And then in the second half of the fight, it was pretty much a majority Demirison type of fight, which, as we saw in the scorecards, he got, 7 rounds to 3-on-2 scorecards and 6 rounds to 4-on-1 scorecard to get a unanimous decision win there. So he has those, 2 wins this year, one against Gerald Washington and now here against Adam Kaunaki that, could build up for momentum there in the heavyweight division. From a business standpoint, if Kaunaki would have been able to get through this fight and get this win, then I kind of saw Kaunaki potentially fighting the loser of the fight that's coming down later on between Andy Ruiz Jr. and Luis Ortiz. But now with him losing and Demirison winning, we'll see what happens with Demirison to see what else that could be out there for him. Or I just thought of this. Maybe there's one particular fighter there in the heavyweight division that we haven't heard from in a while to be in the ring that should be in the ring, and that's my guy, Johnny Rice. Johnny Rice versus Ali Demirison. That could be a potential bout there in the heavyweight division later on down the line. But any thoughts about that particular co-feature bout with Adam Kaunaki and Ali Demirison and the performance from either fighter there? Y'all could chime in.
Yeah, with Kaunaki, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, we know about their two losses to Helenius. We know about that, and even with that, we always know that he's a guy doesn't have the greatest body, things like that. Not that you have to be a sculptor to be a boxer. You don't have to that, but it does kind of give you a telltale sign of your fitness level. We know that. So last night, Kaunaki usually used to come in around 270, 260, something like that, whatever. Last night came in at 251, that was great for him. That means they committed to coming in at a lot of weight, things like that. Once again, still kind of look the same, but he needed to come in at 251. But the first round, this guy threw over 100 punches in the first round. Why? Because
I'm sorry, I'm mute, Terrell.
But think about this: you throw 100 punches over in the first round, and I don't know what was the punch output numbers in the second and third round, but it was still pretty high, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's stop right there. Something's not right, because obviously just that strategy is not working for Kaunaki. It's not working because around those mid rounds, he started to lean on those ropes, and he said, "I'm tired, boss. Eyes tired, boss.
Eyes tired, boss."
And the thing about it, and no head movement whatsoever, because me and Mike kind of talked about that last night a little bit. He has no head movement at all. So right there, he's going to be there to be hit by Demirison all night long. And when he slowed down, he just simply played right into Demirison's hands in that regard.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, I mean, put it like this: would you rather be an efficient puncher throwing 50 punches per round, or would you rather be a volume puncher throwing 100 punches per round and they're light pity pat shots? Me, I would rather be an efficient puncher, throwing my punches smartly, correctly, and with the right amount of force that could reserve my energy into my later rounds, things like that. Mm-hmm. So the strategy they got for him, the high punch output, because Demirison wasn't in his face like that, and he simply burned himself out early. Never, no head movement, weak to the body. He's weak to the body, things like that, and it showed. So they need to rethink his strategy. I mean, at this point, he probably needs a new trainer, just to give him a new strategy for him.
Man,
that was just.
Hey, real quick before Boxing Academic gets on, I wanted to add in the leader of War Week Radio Network, Joseph Heron, joining us here on this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. Welcome, Joseph, on this conversation here. So,
hey, Source, thank you for allowing me on, and thank you for being the gracious host, brother. I tell you what, guys, I really feel for Adam Kovnowski. He's a good dude. And to be honest with you, and everyone around him understands this basic truth, right? He's always been a relentless, aggressive pressure fighter who had great durability and would overwhelm his opponents with volume. Well, after the Chris Arreola fight, everyone around him understands something happened during that fight. He took way too much punishment, and he hasn't been the same since. You saw him try to box from mid to long range, and he just doesn't have that ability or pedigree. And being a heavyweight, it's very difficult. Like, you never see guys like Alexander Usyk. I mean, that just doesn't happen in the heavyweight division, especially not in America. I mean, look at the two guys that we saw in the ring last night. Demirizin is an Olympic representative of Turkey, right? Yeah. And this is a guy who started fighting very late in his years, and that's why you don't see a lot of heavyweights in the amateurs, because it's so difficult to find quality sparring. So these guys don't develop that deep amateur background and develop those skills, and they live by the old adage, swing hard, swing for the fences, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you know, and I feel bad for him, man.
Yeah.
You know, Kaunowski, man, oh boy, it was hard to watch those two fights with Robert Helenius, and you know, you could see it coming. Tall, rangy guy with experience, with heavy hands. Well, you knew that was going to be a nightmare style matchup for him. Proved to be twice, and last night was the nail in the coffin. Yeah, I mean, I will say this, though. Very entertaining scrap. Very competitive. Very lively. But, yeah, I mean, so forget about the talk about getting him a new trainer. You know, stick a fork in him. Whatever he was going to do in this game, he's already done it.
Yeah.
James, I have a reply to you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead real quick, and then I'm going to do a rundown of Kaunowski with what Joseph said.
So you said for some reason he started having his hands down in the second half of the fight. It was because he got tired. Say it again.
It was the third round.
Excuse me, third round. It was because he was tired. There's not for some reason. The reason was because, as Terrell said, why would he throw 100 punches if he knew he couldn't keep the output up for the rest of the fight? Mm-hmm. He threw, you know, a bunch of punches and got tired. And as my man said, Joseph said, something happened, because he's definitely a shell of himself. If Joseph would have never brought that point up, I would have never thought about it like that. He's definitely a shell of himself. I mean, we knew that, right? But I would have never. The thing that I was also going to say, which is my second point, I was almost offended that Matt said that this guy would compete against the top heavyweights, and then I realized that he's from New York or fights out of New York. Yeah, so I'm less offended now. I get it. Yeah, it's like the New York pride.
Look, guys, as intelligent and as insightful as Matthew is, he's still a fan and a homer, man.
Yes, he is.
You know, and God bless him for it, man. You know what? The sport of boxing needs more guys like him. You know, as passionate, but make no mistake about it, guys. He's still a fan and he's still a homer.
Yeah.
It is what it is, though, brother.
I mean,
no lies told, Joseph.
Let me ask you something, Source. Hey, first of all, congratulations for getting credentialed to that fight last night, man. What was the attendance last night? Do you know?
Man. Let me see if I can find it,
because I heard they were actually papering the place the day of the fight. Is that accurate? They were giving away tickets.
They probably were. The top row was taped off.
They didn't even open up the upper deck. Yeah, and Barclays isn't a huge room.
And a good number of those single level ticket, you know, the sections like the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those things.
Yeah.
Like, there were a good number of seats down there, you know, to be straight up.
In the mezzanine? Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I don't see.
So on press row, they didn't give you the attendance number?
Nah.
Okay, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, usually it's in the email for that. You know?
Yeah, usually they give it to you so you can include it in your write-up, right?
Right, yeah.
And yeah, that's not good if they don't include that. And PBC, I will say this about PBC. They're one of the few promoters that still takes care of the press that cover the fight. They do a great job of taking care of the press in terms of making sure they have everything they need, making sure they have access to the fighters. And
they give you a food stipend.
They do. They give you a food voucher, and it's great. They treat the press with a lot of respect. Unlike Golden Boy Promotion, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. Never mind. This is your platform, brother.
Look, I'll tell you this, right? I've never been approved to a Golden Boy boxing event, but actually on the flip side, I don't think I've ever applied to a Golden Boy boxing event.
Well, I don't think they stage very many events in New York any longer.
Well, no, they don't. But
no.
The other thing is too is that unless if you go on Golden Boy Promotions website, and go to their credentials page, you're not gonna find out if you can apply for credentials. They don't.
Oh, no. Here, look, just FYI between you and I, right? And once again, anyone who wants to apply for the person who handles their credentials most frequently is either what's her name? Cecilia Zuniga, right? Mm-hmm. Or Ed Keenan. So you just have to send them emails directly. So, but once again, unless you're willing to travel to California or Texas,
right?
Best of luck to you.
Right.
But I will say this. So in your mind, do you think attendance was less than 9,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
that's no bueno, man. That's no bueno.
Yeah, and that's interesting, given that how, especially like leading into the fight when it comes to Danny Garcia in the Barclays Center, he's had some of the biggest events at the Barclays Center.
Yeah.
But, I guess it just didn't translate into having fans gravitate towards seeing.
Well,
I guess it's the event itself, the bouts itself, that it was Danny Garcia, because it's separate when it's like, okay, it's a big fight. We're going to see it because it's a big fight in comparison to, oh, it's Danny Garcia. I'm coming there to see Danny Garcia regardless.
Absolutely. Quality of opposition matters. The matchup matters. And also, think about how long ago those events took place, Source.
Yeah.
I mean, look, man, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Unless you're staying active and you remain in the public consciousness.
Right.
No one cares.
You got
that ship is sailed.
Long layout. That's almost 3 years for Danny Garcia.
I mean, it's like, look at Keith Thurman, right? Look at Keith Thurman. He was at one time, even before Deontay Wilder started attracting and pulling in huge numbers, Keith Thurman was their biggest draw.
Yeah.
Right when Floyd retired. Look at his terrible pay-per-view numbers against Mario Barrios.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't even release them. No one released them. Do you know what they actually were? They were so bad, it was shocking. You ready for this? The real number, according to my guy in California, who's an entertainment lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. Who's privy to these, he can tell you everything from UFC to Girls Gone Wild, right? 29,000. Keith Thurman versus Mario Barrios.
Man, let me see, man.
Now keep in mind, this is the actual number, right? But it doesn't include the numbers from direct streaming Showtime app if you order it through there.
Yeah. And didn't this fight have a higher price point too, as well?
I think it had the same, right? $75?
Yeah, around $75 or something like that.
Yeah, key thing, like I said, when you're out of sight, out of mind, and then you're making that demand to pay that price point for a fight against an opponent with virtually little to no name value, no one's going to buy that. So that's not shocking.
That's it, Terrell. And you know what? To PBC and Al Heyman's defense, it was Fox. Fox, they would not guarantee a decent purse for both fighters without attaching it to the pay-per-view revenue stream.
They had to.
And you know what? And it's pointless then. You know what? It's like no one's going to see the fight. It's like you're better off just taking a shorter guarantee and putting it on regular mainstream Fox.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to get people to see the product and to get the sport to grow.
You know what's so crazy? You talk about the thing there real quick with the thing with Keith Thurman and Mario Barrios there on pay-per-view and the numbers there, right? Usually on the web or something like that, I'll go on the Wikipedia and I'll go to the thing where it says pay-per-view. And there it'll show you a list of all the events that were on pay-per-view, and it'll show, like, of course, like the result, the network it was on, and the numbers, right?
Yeah.
You go on there now, right?
Yeah.
That fight's not on the list.
Well, there's a reason for it, and you're not going to find also Ortiz versus Martin. You're not going to see all the last events that were with Fox before they
the
right?
January 1st, and that one you're not going to see that one.
You're not going to see it because that one did less.
You don't see Spence Jr on there either.
No, because that one did only about 130,000. But once again, guys, this is just numbers through the antiquated cable and satellite distribution method, right? Those are the only ones that are tallied with what my guy is looking at. They're not privy to the direct streaming Showtime app. And guys, this is why it's so important from now on, if you're going to purchase these things, purchase it directly through the streaming app, because they don't have to share and split the proceeds with the greedy satellite and cable distribution method.
And
they keep 100% of the proceeds, right?
I think they had restructured that deal also.
They're taking less than 50%. Can you believe back in the day they used to be able to demand 50%? Yep. And the reason for that is not only were they responsible for delivering the package to all of their subscribers, but they were also responsible for collecting 100% of the proceeds through their billing. So the promoters and the networks, they were at their mercy. They had no choice. Now it's anywhere between 45 and 33%, depending on the event.
Yeah.
But guys, they still take a huge chunk. And do you know that the networks like Showtime, they're only entitled to 10% of the pay-per-view proceeds, even though they're expected to guarantee 100% of the purse for the main event.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, I thought that was like the old structure. It was more of like, 45, 10, basically on what they usually have for the pay-per-view.
That hasn't changed, brother.
Yeah.
And so now that no one is really purchasing these pay-per-views, why do you think it's become so difficult? And Showtime is like, well, the money just isn't there for Crawford Spence. That's what. Anyway, I'll DM you with the entire backstory of what I know, Source. Okay, from talking to my guys at Showtime. All right.
Oh, yeah.
It has to stay off the record, my friend.
Yeah, we could go on that conversation because there was a couple of things that I kind of like heard in reference to Showtime when it came to
hey man, if you don't mind airing it on your show, as long as I don't disclose who I'm getting the info from, I can release it.
I mean,
would you rather leave it on DM?
We'll table that for a later time because I think that conversation we'll be able to go back and forth on it through other social media means, because there's still more things that have to be sorted out, at least for me, but I'm still holding on to hope. Okay. You know what, brother? Why do you think? Look. I'm Mariah Carey. I still believe that someday we will have okay, this whole other. No. I hear you, brother. You know what? And you know what? We all can hope, but look, after Friday, from what I was told, was the deadline. Friday. Mm-hmm. Right. If they hadn't struck a deal by Friday, right, they were moving on. And guys, there's a reason why Espinosa is now going to start discussion for Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, because they need a big event for their fall and winter schedule. You pretty much kind of gave out a little bit of who I was going to bring up as far as That's it.
So I have a question to the panel.
Right.
So we mentioned the scenario where the Thurman fight was $75. It sold, you said 25,000 sales, something like that.
$29,000. Yeah,
29.
29,000.
So would it be better to reduce that price, divide it by 3, make it $25? And do you think the number would be 3 times whatever number that was sold, whatever the number that got you to 29,000?
Boxing academic. Let me ask you something. Would you stop streaming events if it were 25 or 75? Would you just say, you know what, I can get it for free in HD, but out of the kindness of my heart, you know what, I'm going to pay the 25, 30, 40 bucks, whatever it is. Would you do that? Now, once again, most boxing diehards, and here's the dilemma, right? And everyone understands this at networks, promoters, they get it, right? And this is why Bob Arum is doing his damnedest to keep everything off pay-per-view, right? This is why. Because no one's purchasing it, and it's hard to fault the long-suffering boxing fans, because for decades, we've been getting reamed, brother. Like, think about this, and they know this. We're the only major pastime in the entire world, okay, that charges their diehard fans to see every major event. Now, think about if football had done that decades ago.
Amount, I know I think you cover like contact sports in general there, Joseph. So you kind of know about the numbers with mixed martial arts when it comes to UFC, Bellator, and those other things. Yeah. So they could have different pay-per-view numbers, pay-per-view buys, have a different price point, but I think their base is kind of like more consistent as far as like how many pay-per-views that they buy and things like that, and they still have the same dilemma as what boxing has, especially today and over the past 5, 6, 7 years or so when it comes to streaming and things like that, and that the promoters know, the networks know, all of that. But because of the way that MMA is structured, whether it's UFC or Bellator, where they have enough fighters that have enough talent that they could put those guys together, and that they know that it could be a pretty good fight or it's a good matchup that people are anticipating. Where on the flip side with boxing, like you said, especially with this year, like how they transitioned those first few months with the Fox pay-per-view series, where they had the January 1st pay-per-view, they had the thing there with Thurman and Barrios. And,
they're originally planning on having one every month.
One every month, that's right.
Yep.
And so the thing about that was, when it came to that in Fox, those two pay-per-view events didn't do well at all, to the point to me where I was surprised when Spence Ugas was on Showtime pay-per-view. I thought it was going to be on Fox pay-per-view, but it ended up being on Showtime.
Well, that was the intent. And so here's the problem, Source, with making this, once again, Crawford-Spence deal. He can't shop this around to Fox any longer. Like Heyman, that's not even an option now.
They had a time period where they could have.
That's right. And you know what? And they shopped all of the pricier events, if you've noticed, to Fox. Mm-hmm. And then that window shut and closed. And so, Fox was like, you know what? We haven't made money. And here was the turning point. Here was the catalyst when they really lost millions. Fox lost millions in funding the Manny Pacquiao Yordenes Ugas pay-per-view. Oh, yeah. That was a huge money pit.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost tens of thousands or tens of millions of dollars on that event.
Yeah.
So that's what did it. And so now that's not an option for Heyman. So what do? And, Steven Espinosa can't justify a $30 million guaranteed purse when the respective numbers don't support that kind of big payment. I mean, dude,
I don't even think. It wasn't even going to be 30.
No. I'm going to let it go because I just announced it anyway, right? Yeah. Okay. So here's the catalyst, right? Here's the biggest impasse. Showtime. Steven Espinosa is only at $8.5 million right now in what they're willing to give Terence Crawford, and Terence is holding firm at $15 million. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. If you're going to pay Terence Crawford $15 million, how much are you going to have to pay Errol Spence Jr. now? So it becomes at the very least a $30 million fight. Now, in this era of pay-per-view piracy, is that a $30 million main event?
No.
That's what's happening, guys. And so yeah, that's from my
that was gonna be part of the conversation. So yeah, we'll just go forward with it. I had talked with one of my guys there in the boxing realm.
Yeah, you don't have to disclose any sources, man. Don't do that on the air.
And the thing that they pretty much told me kind of like the same thing that you just said in reference to there being a serious roadblock. But I didn't get that actual number that you said that was being asked for in 15. Because for me, I had thought about this ever since the fight was talked about or the fight was going to be brought up. There was a target purse for both fighters to meet, base purse, and it was $10 million each.
Well, that's the hope, right? Yeah. That they're gonna eventually, but that's even a tall order for Showtime at this time. Well, once again, they started negotiations at 5.
Well, let me ask you guys a quick question.
Go ahead, Terrell.
Okay, now once again, Terence Crawford started negotiations at 22.
All right. Here's my quick question. For Showtime, what's a much more easier fight to make as far as financial burden? Garcia, Tank, or Crawford, Spence?
They're both really difficult fights to make. Okay, but you know, I can tell you this: that's going to be a really tough fight to make at this time, because honestly, now where there's a will, there's a way, and if people are willing to make concessions, you can make any fight happen. But that's the problem. When you've got a guy like Terence Crawford, who isn't willing to give Al Haymon options on his next 3 fights and have him represent him in this negotiation. Okay, Terence and Bomac, from what I understand, are representing themselves. That's like someone being on trial and trying to represent themselves in court. That's what's making this difficult. And once again, you can't fault them. They were unhappy in their last, promotional representation and effort. And so they're trying to do this by themselves, but it's not working out. Okay. This deal would have already happened if he had just trusted Al Haymon to make the best deal for both men. Because Spence trusts Al Haymon implicitly, says, you know what? I don't care. If you say that this is what's the best offer we can get, then that's the best offer we can get. So that's the problem. That's a huge sticking point, right? At this point, though, Steven doesn't care. He's like, screw the options, screw the rematch clauses. Let's just take care of this fight. Let's do a one-off. I don't care about any of that. Like, let's just get this done, guys, because this is going to be the crown jewel of our fall schedule. And we're holding off announcing everything else until we get this fight done. But we cannot hold off forever. You've got until the end of July, which was Saturday. Yeah, right?
Now.
Yeah, now. And he said, then we're moving on. And it was just announced, from what I've been told, Espinoza is starting negotiations with all parties involved. Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. What does that tell you? Now, with this fight, oh my gosh, you've got Oscar De La Hoya completely insisting to include DAZN when you really don't have to. Let me ask you this, guys. I know both guys are big ticket sellers. Mm-hmm. But are they at the level of attraction where it'll be lucrative to include both platforms?
No.
Well, that's what's going to make this fight impossible to make, guys.
I mean, the thing about what Tank Garcia, they're going to have a big live gate. We know that. That's going to have an incredible live gate. But you cannot put that pay-per-view on DAZN. You cannot, because no one's going to want to.
Well, and once again, if you know the business, you understand that the live gate, dude, it covers a fraction maybe of the main event. Right. Your pay-per-view proceeds and your network big licensing fee is what covers the main event. Yeah. The gate covers everything else, including the prelims. That's what the live gate does.
Right. Yep.
But your licensing fee paid for by the network is supposed to pay for the main event.
Yo, you're on point with that, but I'm still not getting past the part where you talk about Terence Crawford and they're talking about $22 million.
That's what he started with, from what I was told. Yeah. And he's negotiated down to 15 and he's not budging. He's like, you know what? Don't even call me unless you guys can get up to 15.
Hold on a sec.
So when Stephen Espinosa,
y'all see me on the camera right now, right? Okay. Brother Joseph,
yes,
could
sir.
you repeat what you said in reference to the starting point that Terence Crawford said for his asking price?
What he felt he was worth, what he felt he was deserving in this superb matchup. $22 million is what he started negotiations with, from what I was told by my guys at the network. 2 guys told me the same thing.
I wish I had my glasses on so I could be like Shaq in the gift, but I'm like,
oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, brother.
So let me ask you this. Does
Yes,
that
sir.
effectively mean that he doesn't truly want to fight?
No. That means that he's a product of receiving inflated purses. A lot like Devin Haney. Okay, and you can't fault the fighter. Okay, when you're getting paid $6 million to fight Sean Porter.
Slow down there real quick, Brother Joseph.
Yes, sir.
Say that first part again.
He's a product of receiving inflated purses by his promoter.
Thank you.
And so in his mind, his market value is way up here. He believes that he is one of the biggest earners of the sport because he actually was when you look at guaranteed purses.
Right.
Now, you can count on one hand how many guys got paid $6 million guaranteed for one fight last year. And Terence Crawford's one of them. So in his mind, he's like, wait a minute.
Wilder.
Yep.
Plant.
Guys, Tank Davis didn't even get a $6 million guarantee for any of his fights. Okay, so that makes him, in his mind, one of the top earners of the sport. And he was, because that's what he was guaranteed, right? But that's not where his market value is.
Right.
Now, once again, guys, the real bosses of boxing, the fans, determine your realistic market value through ticket sales, pay-per-view sales, TV ratings. Okay, so he's not at that level. If you look at his ticket sales and TV ratings, right, and pay-per-view sales, he's not anywhere near the $6 million realm. Now, to put things in perspective, guys, keep in mind, Canelo, when he fought Floyd Mayweather, one of the most lucrative pay-per-views of all time, was only guaranteed $5 million, Canelo was, when he fought Floyd. Miguel Cotto was only guaranteed $5 million to fight Floyd Mayweather. And Terence got 6 to fight Porter. So this guy, when you look at those comparisons, he's like, well, shit, man, I must be I'm one of the biggest stars and biggest earners of the sport. So if I'm getting paid $6 million guaranteed for a mere title defense against Sean Porter, and it's no knock against Sean, because he's an excellent fighter, but he's never been a big ticket seller. He's never been a big mainstream attraction. If I'm getting $6 million to fight him, how much do you think I deserve to fight Errol Spence, the next best fighter in the division and a 3-belt title holder? And this is to determine supremacy at 147, historically the second most lucrative division in boxing. How much do you think I deserve then? That's how he came up with that number, and it's hard to fault him because that's what happens when you overpay fighters. You inflate their purses.
So are we suggesting that Bob Arum was justified in feeling salty about Terence Crawford?
Look, and now that you know this, you understand now why he said what he said, right?
Look, I buy a bunch of houses in California for the money that I lost promoting Terence Bud Crawford.
That's it. I could have bought a beautiful house in Beverly Hills. Oh, geez. But that's it, guys. That's the real reason for the saltiness. And on top of that, and I hate to say this, guys, and this is what happens to a lot of fighters that kind of embark on their own and try to do things on their own steam, and credit to him for trying. But this is what happens in the late, great Don Warwick Chargan, the guy that my show's named after. He's one who taught me everything I know about the business. And he said, look, it's very easy to create a disgruntled fighter when you have your friends and your entourage whispering bullshit in your ear, guys who don't understand the business, and they're telling you, just feeding your head full of crap. And that's what's happened here, guys, with Terence.
B&B Boxing.
Telling him that Bob Arum's a racist and he didn't promote him properly. And like, Chingao, dude. I mean, it's just been a mess, dude. A mess, huh?
Speaking of that, Joseph, I have been asking around ever since I think it was June or whatever it was. That particular lawsuit was from, the state of Nevada, and then it went to federal court, and now it's back to the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
But that particular report was like in the previous month. Ever since then, I hadn't heard anything about that particular case.
Well, look, what I think is going to happen, and what should have already happened, in my opinion, but unfortunately, the affidavit, right, the complaint, is just mired with a bunch of nonsensical just rubbish. If they had just stuck to, hey, this is what you owe, you're in breach of contract at this amount, it would have already been settled. It wouldn't have had to go to court. But because that poorly written complaint, it just mired in a lot of nonsensical just absurdities. It's making things a lot more difficult for Terence.
Before we go forward, real quick, Brother Terrell, I see your avatar right there, and
those lobster tails.
Yes,
right on, man.
And I might make another request or order if I'm confirmed to be over by that way next weekend. So be on the lookout for that.
Outstanding, man. That's beautiful.
But going to more of what you're saying there, Joseph, and it goes into the business aspect. And you kind of like talk about this with Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. I know that Ryan Garcia was in attendance for Tank Davis's last fight against Rolly Romero. Put his ass in the dirt! But you talk about those numbers there, and we got the reports from Tank Davis's fight against Rolly Romero. We had the reports for Ryan Garcia's fight against Emmanuel Tego. Probably soon we'll get the reports for Ryan Garcia when he had his recent fight here, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, Javier Fortuna?
Javier Fortuna, yes.
Yeah.
And I know that probably both of those fights, the Fortuna and Tego fight, won't even come close to the gate receipts that Tank Davis had for his event again. And I do say event against Rolly Romero there. And I think, and you talk about the whole thing with the pay-per-view and stuff like that. Steven Espinoza did make a comment on that when it came to Ryan Garcia, and he said, but Ryan Garcia isn't really exclusively a DAZN fighter. He doesn't have an exclusive deal with DAZN like how Canelo Alvarez had a deal with DAZN. So that's so. But,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Source. My apologies.
But the thing about it is that Ryan Garcia, it was one of the key components for Golden Boy to secure the extension to have DAZN, be the broadcaster for, the huge majority of their fights going into the rest of this year. So it's kind of like he's not a DAZN fighter, but he is a DAZN fighter because he's on the Golden Boy. But
if you remember, it's just the way the Golden Boy contract is set up with DAZN. Okay, none of their fighters under their entire 82 fighter roster is signed with DAZN, right?
Right.
They're all signed by Golden Boy, and Golden Boy has an exclusivity deal with DAZN. That means they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, and that was the entire problem with Canelo. look, people don't understand promoters. They, it's like it's like you don't have to necessarily do what's best for your client. You have to do what's best for Golden Boy Promotions. And first and foremost, you've got to keep the network happy because they're the ones who fund every single one of your events.
Yeah.
Right? So if they want a say and they say, no, we want Ryan Garcia to fight this guy, guess what? You're going to do everything you can to convince Ryan Garcia, hey, you know what? DAZN wants this fight. Take it. They're willing to pay you good money for it. And if you don't, well, there's a very good chance that they're going to take away some of our TV dates. That's going to affect every single fighter on our roster. Okay? So this is why you see no problem with some promoters putting certain fighters on ice, right? Like if they turn down too many offers, right? If they say, no, I don't want to fight this guy, and they turn down too many assignments, you see Al Heyman, Bob Arum, Eddie Hearn, Oscar De La Hoya, they're all like, they have no problem putting your ass on ice if you're and they will label you difficult to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All promoters do it. And why? Because not one fighter is above the health of the promoter or the health of the sport or the health of the network. And that's how they view it and rationalize it. So that's why it's neither here nor there. Even though they're not signed with DAZN, you're not going to see them fight anywhere else but DAZN because of that exclusive deal that Golden Boy has. And look, you are a nothing. You have no power as a promoter unless you have TV dates and a great working relationship with the network. That's the real power in the sport, guys. Like, what do you call a promoter, man, who doesn't have any TV dates, like Lou DiBella or Samson Lukowicz? You're basically a glorified manager. That's it, right?
I was basically gonna say a secondary promoter, but in a sense, they pretty much are. The thing with them is that okay, they could have a couple of fighters that could be good enough to be either like, a good B-side opponent or, someone that could just say, hey, I have this person that, could generate a big fight with another person, but they're not quite at the level to where they could carry the promotional company in order to secure a network deal. Like, for example, with David Benavidez, I mean, he's been a 2-time WBC super middleweight champion, undefeated, but, of course, he's had his 2 little mishaps here and there. So he doesn't have enough momentum to become a big enough fighter to secure maybe a network deal or an exclusive deal with the network. You know what I mean? So, yep. So there's that. Terrell, you had something real quick before I wanted to jump into the thing with Paul and Rotman real quick.
No, you can go ahead because actually I kind of got a kind of follow up with that fight right there dropping out. So we'll go ahead.
All right, yeah. So of course, like I'm in Barclays Center. Okay, the Showtime telecast is about to start. 9 p.m. Eastern time or whatever it is, and whatnot, right? And of course, the reports had been circulating or whatever it is that the fight's off. Jake Paul posts a thing. A little pamphlet PDF file or whatever it is through MVP, most valuable promotions. and it talks about the whole thing there with Hasim Rahman or whatever it is. And the funny thing about it is like, I'm coming to New York City. By the time I get to New York City, I'm in there in Manhattan, so I'm right there, 34th and 8th. You're there in Madison Square Garden, and you see this big old, the Jumbotron or whatever it is. You see that it's Jake Paul versus Hasim Rahman. And then hours later, we find out that the fight is getting canceled. And, like I said, you had the whole little PDF file from Jake Paul and MVP Promotions or whatever it is. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Something, what was it? Something just ain't right.
Oh, jeez.
So the whole thing goes down, while the the event goes on, and then I get the email, from the thing through Magnum Media that makes it official that the fight card is canceled. Now after that, it's been like a whole firestorm on social media. Jake Paul says something with, I guess, Eddie Hearn or whoever it is. Hakeem Rahman Jr. has his explanation, pretty much like a two-part explanation. You got like a whole bunch of back and forth Twitter beefs going on. You got, Hakeem Rahman talking trash to other people. You got like Ryan Garcia talking trash to Ishai Smith. You got like a whole bunch of craziness going on. But there was like one thing that kind of like struck me a little bit, and this was like a while back in a previous conversation, and this was while it was in Twitter Spaces. We had boxing conversations on Twitter Spaces, and one person kind of like brought it up. It was like something is interesting about Jake Paul picking Hakeem Rahman, not just because they've been in the gym and they've had sparring sessions in the gym, but they picked Hakeem Rahman to be at a certain weight class when they know that Rahman has been familiarized with weight class a couple divisions higher or a division higher than what Jake Paul was going to be at. So when you had the whole thing with Hakeem Rahman Jr. kind of like explaining this situation, it's like, who do you blame more for this situation from happening? Is it Hakeem Rahman Jr. or is it Jake Paul? Now, we know how the thing is with professionals and whether, they're at a specific weight class and they have to go down a weight class or whatever it is to kind of like make a specific weight. But what Hakeem Rahman said was, he said, hey, okay, you wanted me to be at a certain particular division, like cruiserweight division, and I'm at the bridgeweight. So I'm like trying to get down to 205 or whatever it is for bridgeweight, 205, 215, and you want me to come down to 200 or 195. And I'm like, well, if I can't make it, then I can't make it. But what I will do is I'll say, hey, I'll see if I can get to this particular weight and I'll pay the penalty. No problem. You don't want to pay me that much for it? Cool. I'll do that in order for this fight to happen. But he's saying that they didn't even want to do all of that. They didn't even want to make no compromises, not try to work things out or whatever it is. They just said, whatever, we're going to scrap this fight. A week before the event happens. And so not only do we not have this particular fight, but every other fight that was going to be on the fight card is scrapped.
Yep, Brandon Lee, Amanda Serrano. Yeah, it's a very good card. Very good card.
And the thing about it is, right, is that, and for people that might, have the thought about if it's under the fault of Jake Paul, that would be interesting in my sense, because in previous conference calls and previous conversations when I've been on there, I've kind of said, hey, Jake Paul is someone that has given an avenue for other fighters to get on the cards, for people to see what those fighters can do or are able to do.
Yeah.
And that has pretty much for, like I said, with Amanda Serrano,
yeah,
and with a couple of other guys,
Montana Love,
Love, they were able to secure either big fights or big deals later on down the line.
That's right.
So now we have this instance here where, well, one with Amanda Serrano, we thought that we were going to get a rematch with Katie Taylor in that.
Yep.
And the other fights, like you said, that were going to be on this card, now they're pretty much scrapped out. So now you got fans of Jake Paul that don't really have that opportunity to see these fighters, would have had that opportunity to see them in Madison Square Garden, and now they don't get that chance. So it's like, okay, who do we point the finger on? I know that there's been a couple of polls that are out there, And it looks like the lead is Jake Paul getting the most of the blame for this particular thing not happening. But
source, I'll tell you this. What is the first rule of thumb in business ownership or management? Everything is your fault, right?
Yeah.
The buck stops there. And so when it comes to fans pointing the finger, that's irrelevant. What matters most is who looks bad in the eyes of the benefactors, the guys who's funding this event, Showtime Sports and Stephen Espinosa.
Yeah.
That's Jake Paul, man. I mean, look, you said you were going to deliver this product. We're willing to pay for that huge guaranteed purse. We're willing to pay for all the promotional production, everything. Do you know how much money it is?
What is it? The All Access. The scheduling the people to go for the conference.
Giving you that very precious TV date that a lot of fighters and promoters would kill for. We're giving this to you, and you leave us at the altar a week before the fight?
Before the fight.
So it doesn't matter. Like, Rahman's just a pawn here. He is just a role player. The fact that you could not manage this event to get it across the finish line, boy, that's not a good look. And once again, he's new into this business. Okay, he doesn't have a long, great track record in history of dealing with these things.
Or a long-standing relationship.
That's it. So this is not good. I will say this: this is not good for Jake Paul, and this is brilliant. This is great news for the sport of boxing, and I'll tell you why. The fact that Showtime was willing to give TV dates, these very precious TV dates, to these jokers
in the summer.
I mean, think about this. Think about this, brother. How big is PBC's roster of talent right now? It's over 250 fighters strong. There are so many fighters who are inactive and would kill to be on Showtime Sports right now. And then you're giving TV dates to the guys like Le'Veon Bell, Adrian Peterson,
Frank Gore.
Come on. You're Jake Paul. It's like, so the fact that these guys, you got 2 canceled events simultaneously, that is great news for the sport of boxing. That means they're going to be more reluctant to trust these ham and eggers, these nobodies, these inexperienced YouTubers with all of this money and these huge events. That's great news for boxing.
Well, it's great news for boxing, and it's bad news for like you said, for Jake Paul and Most Valuable Promotions. But this kind of like shows the level of inexperience that he has.
That's it.
To the business. If you're going to be a promoter, that's one thing, and you should have, Hold on, this is on the live chat, man. I'm gonna post this on the conversation. But the thing with Jake Paul,
hey, that's my brother Frank. What's happening, man?
We see this all the time in the sport of boxing or professional boxing, right? Whether it's the main event or it's a co-feature bout or whatever it is, there could be an instance where it would be the A side against the B side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, maybe the B side has like an injury or, has the thing where he doesn't make weight or a certain weight by a certain time period, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what ends up happening is they have options.
Yeah, usually you make concessions to get the event across the finish line.
To get the event across the finish line. Either they'll renegotiate or do something with the weight and have someone pay the penalty. Like, hey, even with the A side, we had years ago Mayweather versus Juan Manuel Marquez. I'm like, Mayweather paid the penalty.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But in other events, you have it to where you could have either somebody not make weight, at the day of the weigh-in, or there could be an injury or, of course, recently with the positive COVID test or something like that. They would have replacement opponents available so that the fight or the event can still take place.
That's it. Look, it's I tell you what, Tom Brown and Al Heyman are great at that. They're great at lining up replacement opponents, and this is a long-standing rule in promotions 101, right? If you got the main event and the co-main event, your big ticket sellers, boy, you better have a replacement for their opponents. And if you can't put them on the card, boy, you get them a whole row of tickets, and you get them some cash on the side, plus a nice trip to whatever resort or casino you're staying at,
right?
You know, but you take care of them, and you make sure that you've got that reservoir set aside, man, so the fight still comes off. Yeah, this is just a huge blunder on Jake Paul's part. And this does not look good in the eyes of the Showtime brass. And I'll be very surprised if they continue with their long-term treatment of Jake Paul and merely just give him a one-off the next time. Because, dude, let's just face it, his last two events, boy, they haven't done well on pay-per-view.
The rematch that he had, you know,
50,000.
Yeah, 50,000.
Can he not just change his mind and like say the fight is still on?
After you've already sent out an official press release saying that you're going to give refunds, no, that's done, man.
Wouldn't it be in his sort of frame of character to like, I got you, or you know, however he adds appeal to himself? Wouldn't that sort of fit in his like MO of like bringing attention to himself? I'm not saying he should do it, right? But I'm just saying.
Look, if it's 6 or 8 weeks before the date, yeah, you can say, hey, we were able to salvage this. We came, and that was originally Rockman Jr. Because remember, this was originally supposed to be Tyson Fury. Okay, so Rockman Jr. was the replacement. Yeah, what did I say? Tommy Fury was the original opponent. So Rockman Jr. is the replacement here, but you know, why don't you make certain concessions with him then? You know, hey man, okay, you can be at 215, but you're going to have this contest is going to be held at 14-ounce gloves. Something.
Right.
Something. You make a concession. Okay, you're going to give me your entire purse, and you're going to make the minimum $10,000 for this thing. Right? Hey, man, you know what? If you still want to have this fight, it's going to cost you because this is very unprofessional. You know, you agreed to a deal. This event and this date means a lot to us for Showtime as well as Madison Square Garden because we've already paid to book the event. Okay, so this is going to cost you, brother. And once again, even if I just pay you $50,000, it's still going to be your biggest payday to date.
Was his weight 215 though?
215, yep.
Well, one thing is a side note. I know it's a far side note. So in light of the cancellation for the Jake Paul Rahman fight, right? So we already know that we are pretty much a week out from that fight. A lot of money has already been spent towards production costs, but there's still money as far as the actual persons and stuff like that. Once again, I know it's a far thought, but as a side note, I wonder, in light of the cancellation for this fight, can those remaining monies that Showtime has not spent be forecast and pushed up to Crawford to get that up to the finish line?
No, because Jake Paul's listen to this. Even with Jake Paul's, Rockman's, and Errol Spence's original guaranteed purse amount, you combine all of those, that still doesn't equate to what Terence Crawford wants to be guaranteed. Look, man, Jake Paul, he's a YouTuber. He has no problem being guaranteed only $1.5 million and then taking everything else on the back end.
Right.
Okay, he has no problem doing that. Since he's the lead promoter, he gets everything. He doesn't have to. I mean, he gets a percentage of the concessions. He gets the merch. He doesn't have to give his promoter 20% of his purse because he's a lead promoter. He gets it all, guys. So he has no problem taking the short money guarantee. Where Terence Crawford, oh boy, yeah, he wants a small fortune, man, for this fight.
Yeah, you want everything like up front, and usually, and I thought that was gonna go for this thing with Crawford and Spence, is that it would be like the same deal that usually they have for a lot of the fighters under PBC, especially if you are able to establish yourself and get like a company that would be partly a promotional company, like Man Down Promotions, or Lions Only Promotions, or Man.
That's for tax purposes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So for me, I thought it would have been like B&B Promotions or B&B Boxing, and then you would have your set price, you would have the thing for pay-per-view split, and you would have the thing on the back end, but they didn't, they didn't really want that. They wanted everything up front. So,
well, once again, and I hate to say this, brother, but without Bob Arum, Todd DeBuff, Bruce Trampler, Brad Goodman representing the Terence Crawford side, it was pretty much a no-hoper when negotiations originally started. You don't have someone who's savvy or knowledgeable of the business trying to actually negotiate a multi-million-dollar deal, and that's just not realistic, man.
And and the thing is, I've had multiple conversations in reference to people that support Terence Crawford, and they, kind of like defend him in a sense. But one thing that I keep bringing up when it comes to Terence Crawford, and he said this on multiple occasions when it comes to business, he's like, if it makes sense, then the fight will get made. If it doesn't make sense, then the fight won't get made.
Boy, you hit the nail on the head, brother. I don't think he in his mind, he doesn't need this fight. He's already packing his bags to Minnesota.
He said that verbally multiple times. Yep. He said, "Listen, I don't need to fight Errol Spence." He said that verbally multiple times. But from a boxing fan's perspective, from a competitor's perspective, from a big event perspective, like this is something that fight fans really wanted to see, because they felt like these two guys were at or near their primes here at this particular point of their careers. And so to have something like that happen, two undefeated guys, two guys world champions, two guys that are among the top in the pound for pound rankings for various organizations, and in the Boxing Source top 5 pound for pound or whatever it is, that you would get this fight. But now like have been explaining over the past hour or so, that Joseph is like, man, wow, that seriously has me bowed there. But
man, and I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, and it's just, it is what it is. And we wrote an article about this about 3 weeks ago when it was first it made attention to us, and excuse me. And so we first disclosed all of this, but we didn't put any figures out in the article. I'm telling you this just because we're chatting, just amongst friends.
Yeah, because I ain't gotten the figures either. I just knew that from what I was hearing, that it was at the time, it was like a few weeks ago, like around the same time that you posted.
So the article was called, and it was on Boxing News 24 several weeks ago. It says, "Is Showtime and Bud Crawford at an impasse?" Yeah, that was my article. Mm-hmm. Or that was my guy's article, rather. He's the one who wrote it. And, But that was our article. And so, so now the actual figures that we're talking about, not just, because I couldn't disclose any of that, man. I was told, hey, you can't disclose any of the actual figures because then they'll know it's me. Then they'll know it's me leaking this information, right? Mm-hmm. So we couldn't enclose it in the article. But because it seems that we've passed the deadline, announcement, I can go ahead and disclose the figures, because it's not going to get done, guys. When Stephen Espinosa said to Lance Pugmire this weekend, we're stuck, right? We're at an impasse. You know what? That tells me they're not even close still.
Not even close.
Terence is standing firm. Yeah.
Because that was the other thing about yesterday, was that there would have been like some type of buzz or something in the air that maybe during the telecast for Showtime's thing with Garcia and Benavidez, that they would announce, Spence versus Crawford. But we just didn't hear any nothing really just being anticipated. You're trying to jump in for a double dutch, and you're about ready to jump in for the thing for the double dutch or something. We really didn't even have that. So after that, like you said, it was a deadline. I thought it was more of a deadline of Errol Spence and his career path, and that he had only a certain amount of time before he just said, you know what, I'm going to just go up in 154 pounds. And that he just kind of put a deadline to try to make that fight happen. And, but I'm kind of glad that you kind of explain this in detail, because there are a few people that need clarification in reference to this. And so we have something that's on wax that we could present to the people, that says, hey, look, they tried multiple times, but they just couldn't get it past the finish line. And this is why it couldn't get past the finish line. So,
well, I appreciate that source. And once again, man, I wouldn't just announce this on anyone's channel. You're a very smart guy, and you're a very good boxing scribe, and you're very objective. And it's hard to discuss any of this with fans. On other fan-driven sites, and we all know who those groups are, but on other fan-driven groups, right, channels, if you say anything that they perceive to be defamatory in nature, or asparaging in nature towards Terence Crawford, then they're going to attack you, and they won't believe it. They're going to call you a hater, and once again, I'm objective. I'm a journalist just like you, brother. I don't have a dog in the hunt. Mm-hmm. Right? I just report, and that's it. Right? Now, I will tell you what these guys said, but I'll tell you that off air, and I'll tell you off the record. I wouldn't say that, but yeah, boy, it's been very frustrating for all parties involved, and most importantly, it's frustrating for the fans. But yeah, thank you for actually stating that, because I wanted to be very thorough, so that no one had any misunderstandings about what really happened.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I was saying earlier when, you first brought up the conversation, it was I had, some knowledge of it. I just didn't have the full details of it. And up to a certain point, like you said, in reference to deadline, I really didn't want to disclose that many details.
Yeah, well, it's over now, brother.
It's over now.
Yep, they're going to be moving past this, guys. And so, what's next for both fighters?
Oh man, wow.
Yep.
Well, we know that Errol Spence is a very vocal, social person. And earlier this week, he made it vocal on social media when he said, "Ain't no way I'm fighting that dude." He meant that ain't no MFing way that he's fighting that dude that's still there 147 pounds. So what that means is he's going to do, I guess, what he said he's going to do.
Move up in weight?
Move up in weight. That's right.
Okay, well, how many viable options are there for him? How many big money options are there realistically for him at 154?
Well, there aren't that many big money options there at 154, and there would have been a potential good fight for him at 154, only if that person won his last fight, and that was Brian Carlos Castaño.
Boy, oof.
Yeah,
That's a barn burner, man.
Yeah, if he beat Jamal Charlo and he was the undisputed champion at 154 pounds, then Spence would have been for sure moved up to 154 and challenged Brian Carlos Castaño for those belts. But now, with Castaño not only losing to Mel Charlo, but losing by knockout emphatically, that, pretty much takes away the value out the window. The other fight to me that could have happened, but won't, and it's because one, it would have been a cross promotional bout against with someone that is also, I guess, in a sense, kind of against Al Heyman. But it would have been Errol Spence at AT&T Stadium against Virgil Ortiz. And now Virgil Ortiz already has his bout that's coming up here. Was it next week?
Yeah, that's a big JFW bout for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And then once again, you've got that, you know, a lot of the diehard Mexicanos will be supporting Virgil Ortiz. Yeah, it's a big local regional event.
Yeah.
But, you know, it still doesn't do much on pay-per-view, brother.
Yeah, it doesn't do much on pay-per-view. It may do, you know, good numbers at the gate, but not much on pay-per-view at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean.
Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And once again, none of these guys are big ticket sellers. Mm-hmm. Gosh, that's a huge problem in trying to put together these events. Because, yeah, there aren't huge ticket sellers in the top 25 at 154 pounds. I mean, the biggest ticket seller would be, and probably the most lucrative fight, if you had this on pay-per-view in Australia as well, would be Tim Tszyu. But Tim Tszyu's already committed to fighting Jamal Charlo next year in January. So who do you have? Sebastian Fundora? He's not a huge ticket seller yet.
He's not a huge ticket seller yet, but
you know, I would love to see maybe a fight against Liam Smith. That's a great style matchup, but that's not a big event.
Nope, it's not.
You can't fight Erickson Lubin. He's coming off a loss, a very damaging one as well.
Which we
Tony Harrison, he looked good in his last event, but he's never been a big ticket seller either. So what the hell?
Danny Garcia said he want to fight him.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Boy, gosh. Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Yeah, see, that's a huge problem, guys.
Yeah, so Errol Spence is stuck. He's stuck.
What, do you have him fight Austin Trout, come out of retirement? He's still ranked?
No,
exactly. Like, this is a real problem, guys. Now, once again, Showtime understands this. They're like, guys, this is the fight.
See, that was the thing there with Errol Spence when he had his fight against Erislandy Lara. And it kind of was the plan for him, but he had that eye injury, which really kind of foiled the big plan, was for him to be the guy that kind of like took the torch of sorts away from Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if he would have got in there with Manny Pacquiao, got a win against Manny Pacquiao, and potentially an emphatic win or an emphatic stoppage win over Manny Pacquiao,
then it would have mattered less who his opponent was. Yeah. Because he'd be a much stronger A side, a much more mainstream, a bigger mainstream attraction. That totally makes sense. But so let me ask you this. I don't know if he can still physically do it, but you look at Jamal Charlo, who had plans to move up to 60 after this fight, but you look at the landscape and you look how fractured the business is. He's like, well, why would I do that when all of the bigger money fights are down here at 54? And these are makeable fights. Tim Tszyu's going to be a huge fight, but Crawford would potentially be a huge fight. There are so many other makeable fights here. Virgil Ortiz is going to be moving up sooner rather than later. So is Jaron Boots Ennis. You know, so why would I want to go up to 160 when there isn't any money up there? Because Golovkin's going to be busy. I can't fight my brother. Demetrius Andrade isn't a ticket seller. Neither is Janibek Alimanova. Jaime Munguia is the only fight up there for me, and that's impossible to make because he's with Golden Boy. So that's why he stayed down. So let me ask you this. Is it more beneficial if Errol can make the weight? I know he's working with a nutritionist now who's also his conditioning coach. Mm-hmm. Is it beneficial for him to stay at 47 another year and a half, 2 years?
I don't think he can stay another year and a half, 2 years. But one thing that you did mention in those potential opponents was one guy that is a mandatory one of the mandatory challenges for one of the belts he has, and that's Sharon Boots-Ennis.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's probably the biggest fight that would be left for him since this whole Crawford thing could be scrapped out. The only problem is Boots Ennis is not the first in line for his belts. Iamana Stanionis is. So
because
now,
he's the WBA regular title holder.
Because and for me personally, I don't know how he's the first in line because the last time Errol Spence defended the IBF.
Well, no, I'll tell you exactly why.
Because
Stanionis signed an advisory deal with Al Heyman.
Advisory, yeah.
Okay, and Jerron Boots Ennis didn't. He's with Cameron Duncan.
Cameron Duncan, yep.
Okay, so that means, he's not going to get that preferential treatment with the WBA, man. You know they're in bed with Al Heyman.
Well,
that's common knowledge among the business.
And the crazy thing is that after Boots Ennis' win over Castillo Clayton, they kind of, to a certain extent, Showtime and Steven Espinosa said, "Hey, man, we want to, go have a full go with Boots Ennis there on Showtime." So it's like you definitely have the interest there with Boots Ennis. It's just that the way that the title situation is at 147. Yeah, you have that whole deal where Stanionis signed that agreement. He had his fight with the Radza Butayev.
Yep,
pretty good fight.
That's a great fight, man. But that's why that was designated for a title.
Yeah. So.
So the way that this landscape at 147 may shape out is that Errol Spence won't get his flawless victory that he probably should have gotten, and will probably end up moving, and then it'll probably end up being Boots Ennis who unifies the titles.
Look, brother, I don't think anyone, because this fight more than likely isn't happening this year, I don't think anyone's going to be unifying the titles anytime soon. This is very rare air of it. And we as boxing fans have been spoiled because there usually aren't this many unified or even undisputed fights this often in a short period of time. Like, we've been spoiled, guys. Since the pandemic, since life went back to normal.
The past couple years, like 2019.
Oh my gosh, man! Like since the world started going out and supporting events again, we've been spoiled. Boxing has been amazing. I mean, guys, just think of this, man. In 3 weeks, man, we're getting Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk 2. Oh, and check it out. We may have to illegally stream this on Sky. Because, dude, from the licensing fee that they're requesting currently, the Saudis, from what I've been told, ESPN nor Showtime nor anyone is interested because they're not big ticket sellers. Well, I mean, you've got one guy, Anthony Joshua, who's a huge ticket seller in Europe, and he's a virtual unknown in the States, unless you're a diehard boxing fan. And then you've got Usyk, who's never even fought in the States, but maybe once.
Well, he had one fight that was at the MGM National Harbor. That was part of a top-ranked card.
Oh, in Baltimore?
No, this is like in near Capitol Heights. It's near DC.
Oh, okay.
The casino.
The DMV area, though. Yeah.
He was supposed to have another fight there, but he ended up getting injured, and that's where Devin Haney filled in and fought Antonio Moran.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But outside of that, like, he's basically
he's
been a B-side fighter.
And look, after losing their arse, man, ESPN on the Tyson Fury Dillian White pay-per-view. Oh my gosh, talk about a calamity. I mean, they lost their ass. Them and BT Sport both. No one purchased that fight. And so after that debacle, and once again, you knew no one was going to order that in the States. That's a British matchup. I don't care if you're Tyson Fury. That's a British matchup. So that's what they're looking at. They're like, okay, this is a regional matchup. This is not a matchup that's going to be hugely popular in the States. So, no, we're not going to pay the licensing fee. So, guess what? No one's going to cover that fight here in America in 3 weeks.
Yep.
That's how spoiled we've become. We've grown. And remember, this used to happen all the time. Very seldom back in the day did we see these events from Sky Sports or other areas in the world. And because of DAZN, with all these dates, we've been seeing everything from everywhere. It's been amazing.
Yeah. And the thing with what happened though is, remember before the whole thing with Sky, or the exclusive deal with Sky with Anthony Joshua, and now he's after this particular bout, he's going to have an exclusive deal with his own. But before that, he actually had a deal with Showtime.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, you know what caused all of that is look, Anthony Joshua, he had a deal with Showtime, but what Showtime forgot to realize is that Vladimir Klitschko had an existing relationship with his broadcast rights in America with HBO. And so they've spent a lot of money for only half the audience in that huge, expensive event. And that's when they stopped doing business with Anthony Joshua, if you remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, man. So yeah, Showtime isn't interested. ESPN isn't interested. It doesn't really.
Showtime got
isn't interested.
That's Fox, right? Adrian Broner's fight against Omar Figueroa. That's Fox.
No, that's on.
That's Showtime. That's Showtime. That's right.
Yeah,
Adrian Broner was like, "Oh, please, give me another chance. Come on,
yeah.
on, give me another chance."
And then he wants to cry that he's not getting the Floyd Mayweather treatment. Oh, dude, I feel bad for him, honestly, man. I mean, dude, he's just learned a hard lesson in this business.
You think that means he's gonna throw his hands?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think that means he'll throw his hands more?
You know what, brother? If he wants to keep from getting knocked out, he's got no choice. Look, Omar Figueroa may be more of a shot fighter than Adrian Broner, but he's going to come at you. If he has any semblance of durability, keep in mind, Adrian Broner doesn't have very much power at 54 pounds. This guy is usually pretty durable. Even getting hit by a sledgehammer with Abel Ramos for 6 rounds? How long did that last fight go? 7 rounds?
Oh, yeah.
Even getting bludgeoned, he still didn't. The ref stepped in and stopped it. He still didn't take a knee, or he didn't, no moss it. He never gave up. So Adrian, he has no choice but to let his hands go. That's why they chose this. One, he's about the same level in terms of, being somewhat of a shot fighter, right? He's on par with Adrian Broner at this stage of his career. And then it's a style matchup where, he's going to force Adrian Broner to fight.
Yeah.
So we'll see, though, if either fighter has anything in the tank.
The one thing that scares me, so Figueroa should bag rounds. We all kind of have that expectation, because I wouldn't put my money on Adrian Broner throwing a zillion punches. But the one punch that does make me fear for Omar is the uppercut. And, Adrian will throw that.
If he still can pull the trigger. But look, in my opinion, guys, now this is just my humble opinion, and it might change. My mind might change the closer we get to the fight. But in my opinion, Omar, who fights a very similar style to Marcos Maidana, and once again, Adrian Broner doesn't have the greatest wheels. He depends on being flat-footed because he tries to combine speed with power. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a very problematic style matchup, and you take a bigger guy with heavier hands, right? Yeah, in my opinion, guys, Adrian Broner gets stopped for the very first time in his career in the mid to late rounds.
Heavier hands than who?
Than Adrian. Than pretty much everyone besides Maidana he's ever faced.
Oh, okay.
Because, Broner's faced the likes of, Mike Garcia there, you know what I mean? And other guys that are notable. Manny Pacquiao, of course. Y'all know I beat that boy. Jesse
but Omar is a naturally bigger guy, and I've been watching this guy since the amateurs. He's got heavy hands, and he's usually has pretty world-class durability, but who knows after his last fight.
Right.
So we'll see. But in my opinion, if Omar still has anything left in the tank, he stops Adrian Broner for the first time in his career.
If he has the same amount of punch activity, then
that's what I'm afraid of. And that's going to be a sad day for me, man. Once again, I've been covering Adrian Broner since he was just turned pro. Then he just signed with Golden Boy. But oh well. Hey guys, I have to get ready for my program with James Gogi at 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. But Source, always a pleasure, my friend. And I'm going to have a chat tomorrow at 9 Central, 10 Eastern. If you're not doing anything, you're more than welcome. Love chopping it up with you, brother. And again, it's War Week Radio, man. So,
gotcha. Thank you very much there, Brother Joseph, for coming in here for this particular podcast. And for those, that listening in live, and also that'll be on the podcast. You got War Week Radio Network here that's on YouTube. So you check out the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that there. And he's also on Twitter. So you can find him on Twitter there through War Week Radio Network. So, thanks very much for joining us here in the conversation for this particular podcast, joining us with the boxing academic and Brother Terrell from Tampa. I'm going to put this thing over to a close, and I'll see if I'll be listening in here live while you do your thing tonight, and just get prepared see if I can get in on a conversation tomorrow evening there. So
I hope you can make it, brother. The invitation is always there. You're always a gentleman and a gracious host. So thank you, and thank you for all the quality videos that you put up, man. God bless you, brother. Have a great night, guys.
All right, thank you there. I'm gonna put a close to this particular live thing here on YouTube. I still have the thing on for Twitter Spaces. If we're gonna, continue any type of boxing conversation on Twitter Spaces, you could just go on to Boxing Source there on Twitter here for the next few minutes or so, and we'll continue it on Spaces. But like I said, give a thanks to the Boxing Academic for joining in, and give thanks to Terrell for joining in, and give thanks to Joseph for joining in here in this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show for July 31st, 2022. We'll see if we could get right back at it next week. It may be either Sunday or Monday, depending on where I'm going to be at for that particular weekend. But like I say at the end of every show, folks, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to send and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out for the live YouTube, and we'll check y'all later. All right, bet.